So I guess we'll get started. Seems the participants have leveled off. My name is Matthew Eriksen. I'm a professor here at Providence College and chair of the management department. Focus on leadership, both in my scholarship and my teaching. In celebration of Giving Tuesday, a day of global giving, we come together to talk about the topic of resilience. In these unprecedented times, we're faced with challenges, and Providence College is not numb to the global and societal issues we are all grappling with. What we do know is that when we come together as a friar community, we are unstoppable. We're very pleased to welcome Chris Riccobono, class of 2001, grad and founder of UNTUCKit, an American casual apparel company established in 2011 and headquartered in New York City. Chris is a model friar in resilience, managing through personal struggles with anxiety and depression, as well as challenges as a business owner. His commitment to overcoming challenges is exemplified in his generous philanthropy to PC. Chris and his wife, Amy, class of 2003, established the Riccobono Academic Resilience Faculty Fellowship, which I was a member of the first year and had the pleasure of experiencing that and participating in the program. Chris, thank you for being with us this evening, and we appreciate your willingness to share your story. So start out with some questions, Chris. For those who are unfamiliar, can you tell us a little bit about your journey from PC to UNTUCKit?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. When I graduated Providence, I was a finance major in Providence, played tennis there. And when I graduated, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur because I wanted to work for myself, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. But I decided to take a sales job that would give me time to work from home on different ideas I had come up with. So I went and worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, then got a job with GE as a selling medical equipment. And at that point, I still hadn't come up with an idea, even though I was trying to think of anything. So I figured in case the idea never came, I didn't want to not continue to progress my career. So I went back to grad school and somehow miraculously got into Columbia, which was while I was working for GE. I went to Columbia, which was great because I met so many people there, but also learned a little bit of each subject, which is really important as an entrepreneur because you need to do everything. So in 2008, I decided I wanted to go be a trader. All my friends were in finance. Everyone was making a lot of money in finance. And I was going to take a job at, I think I was about 29, that was paying, less than a starting salary. And I went on a bunch of interviews, and luckily I didn't get the job because the market crashed it was 08, and the market crashed in 08. So at that point I said, what am I supposed to do here? I'm still at GE. I just graduated, and all I could think of was, I was thinking about my passions. One of them was wine, collecting it and drinking it. So I said, let me just start a video wine blog. At least it gives me something to do. I can learn how to start a website. I can learn how to market on Facebook. So I did that, and I think about 4 people watched at its height, other than my parents and my wife. But I got to consult a little bit, but most of all, they gave me the confidence, because as an entrepreneur, everyone who's watching this, or any of you guys, all have ideas. Everyone wants to start a company. It's just actually doing it, because it's scary to take that leap, especially when you don't know what you're doing in that specific industry. But I started to think again, and I always had a problem wearing my shirt. It was too long. I actually thought about it right after college, but I said, I don't know how to do fashion. I'm not in fashion. Luckily, we're in this time now where there's an internet, there's social media, there's Facebook marketing. You wouldn't be able to do that 20 years ago because you'd have to open up a brick and mortar right from the start. You'd have to raise all this money. But I was able, as someone who wasn't an expert in the industry, to go and to make these shirts, which the first line, these terrible shirts, which shrunk in half, and was able to make these shirts and market on Facebook and see if there was an audience. And there was. People got really excited from day one. I was still at GE. I stayed at GE until like the 5th year, basically until my boss saw me on TV on a commercial and said, I think it's time you've got to leave. But anyway, I launched in 2010, which is amazing. It's been, I guess, 10 years. We opened our first store in 2015, and now we have 87 stores, including in England. We have 2, and before Corona came, we were, probably one of the fastest growing men's brand in the country. So,
Thanks. So since you took that leap, had the courage to become an entrepreneur, what's the most meaningful lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur?
the most meaningful lesson is, as an entrepreneur, and I think this goes for most things in life, funny enough, but it's really 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You always take the step back. It's the amount of negative. It's so funny that I'm saying that today, because I thought I had survived, but meaning I thought I survived pre-corona and I kind of was done. It was completed. I'll tell you about that in a little while, but you're always going to get bad news. As an entrepreneur, it's one thing after another. The shipping's not working. The shirt doesn't, the buttons fall off, can't raise money. Just one thing after another. And when you're an entrepreneur, I luckily had a job, but I left after year 5. But as you know, usually you don't have a backdrop to go to, especially as you're getting older. So there's a lot of pain. And what I wish I look back on, and I tell all young entrepreneurs this, I wish I enjoyed it more as opposed to being so stressed, because it makes the win really fun. And those hard times, everyone says this, but it's incredible what you learn during all the pain points and how you improve. And I can tell you a little bit about that during Corona as well with UNTUCKit. But so those are the 2 big things, that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to endure or realize there's going to be more bad days than good days. But to me, I love that. And finally, there's just no better job than being an entrepreneur, because you work for yourself. So you're willing to work I remember I used to work literally 22 hours a day, but I'd love every minute of it. Because the end game, you get to participate in the upside.
Thanks, Chris. Can you tell us about the importance of being resilient as an entrepreneur, especially during this COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, I should have said that. Resiliency. I mean, gosh, everyone needs to be resilient during this Corona disaster, not just entrepreneurs, as we all have our personal stories. Obviously, if you can avoid losing someone or having someone get sick or you getting sick, then you should be happy, which a lot of times you forget. But as an entrepreneur, I mean, for me, the story, I shouldn't say it doesn't get any worse, because it could definitely get worse, but it went from, basically we were going to sell the company, and we were getting 20 letter of intents on March 21st for a lot of money, I'll say. And on February 15th, I think it was the day after the Big East the game got canceled, we called the process off. But I still thought we'd be okay. We'd take a month or 2 and we would be fine. Now we make button-down shirts, which I never realized people just stopped wearing. I did realize quickly, because people started staying at home and wearing athleisure. And our success was going to work, going to dinner, traveling. On top of that, and I won't get into too many details, but we had decided to not raise much money, to operate on debt. And it worked. We were there. We had succeeded. We were ready to sell it at a great valuation. And I think on March 1st, I was up in the middle of the night talking to my partner saying, God, we're going to go bankrupt. We're going to lose it all. And when you go bankrupt with the equity that I own, you lose it all. And most likely you also go away. So everything I worked for is done, over. Like I wouldn't even be allowed in the doors. These are the conversations we're having. And the only reason when you say bankruptcy, you ever say, oh, UNTUCKit can't go bankrupt. Bankrupt mean when you have 87 stores open and you have to pay those rents and you don't have any revenue coming in, $0, doesn't matter how good of a company you are, you're going to run out of money. And the banks that lent you the money, I don't know if any young people are listening, so I'm just going into a little more deal. Banks that lent you the money want the money back because they're in crisis mode also. So as many times as you're thinking, this can't be possible, it was. So I went from what was going to be the top to, oh my God, I might not own the company. And I thought I was done with it. But I think I reacted good, because at the end of the day, I realized, number one, that there's a lot of people dying, a lot of people sick. That's most important. And it kind of got me excited again, because I hadn't been very excited for a while, because I had been through all the ups and downs and kind of had made it to a degree in the world of UNTUCKit, made it. And I kind of started to get excited and motivated. How can we survive? Now that then 2 months later, when we took our budget down another 80 million, it just, as you know, I'm still going through it right today. How long it's lasted for everyone in their personal life is just unimaginable. You really can't believe that we're still having these conversations, me and my partner, of what do we need to do next? How are we going to survive? And hopefully now there's an end in sight, but I've been wrong every single time, as probably we all have. So we'll see where we go. But yeah, really, resiliency is, I mean, there's no better word. And I'm not the only one with one of these stories. Amount of people who've gotten fired, laid off. But at the end of the day, there really is nothing you can do. And I think if I can somehow survive, we'll be better positioned. Sorry, I shouldn't say somehow. We will survive now, but we will be better positioned than most brands out there because we make a casual shirt. Everyone's kind of going to stay casual. At least that's what's predicted. Actually, we did a survey, and 70% of men wore a button-down shirt 3 to 5 days a week, and it went down to 14% during Corona. So that's where our customers went. But anyway, back to resiliency. I mean, you just have to be resilient, and Corona's taught everyone that. I mean, people who never had anxiety have anxiety. I don't know anyone who doesn't have anxiety, quite frankly, now, based on this nightmare.
Yeah. So what's the most important thing, do you think, to your resilience? Like, how does it show up for you? Like,
well, resilience has always been my favorite word, and hardworking, hustling, but resilience is, you can't not be resilient. Like I said, whoever's an entrepreneur out there, I mean, you have to be, because you're alone, you're doing it. Most people, I remember people calling me crazy as I was trying to make a shorter shirt, and people, I mean, everyone, including many people who were my family and friends, just said, here he goes again, trying to, so you got to be resilient. I don't know how to really speak to it other than I think it's kind of an inherent thing to a degree. Although I think you'll tell me, and others will tell me, I remember this, that you can teach resilience. I think this happened when I was up at Providence. I don't know if it was you or someone else, because my understanding, I'm not the expert at teaching resilience, but for me, it was kind of something inherited. But I do think it's the most important word. I mean, think about what we just went through. It's the most important word out there. It's the most important quality.
yeah. So I appreciate that. And even as you talked about being resistance, we still, suffer anxiety. This crisis has brought mental health awareness to the forefront. What does it mean to you to be a mental health advocate?
It's very important. As when I sold part of the company, I donated to Providence to start the academic resiliency program. And it was always, I remember when I met with Steve Nuria and we were talking about what area do I want to invest in? And I didn't even hesitate. I kind of just knew right away, because I guess I'll tell a real quick story, but I was 30 years old, had graduated Columbia, was doing great, meaning I had no issues in my life. And one day I was sitting in my apartment and my heart started racing. I went to the emergency room. I couldn't move. I was shaking, all this stuff. And they're like, you have anxiety. Obviously, I didn't believe it. And funny enough, my dad didn't even believe. He's a doctor, because 10 years ago, we were hundreds of years behind where we are today. 10 years ago, most classic doctors wouldn't agree with that diagnosis, probably 14 years ago. And I know what I went through with it. I was living in my parents' home at 30. I couldn't leave the house because I couldn't function if I left. And how is this possible? I have nothing wrong with me. And I couldn't get back. And I think I was on the brink of not coming back. Like, that's what it felt like. Until I met some people, my father-in-law, who had suffered from anxiety many years before. And he told me, no, this is exactly how it feels, exactly how it happens. And I know in this day and age with social media and what goes on with young kids, my kids are all under 3, but from what I hear is it's harder than ever. So I just thought, there's nothing if that had happened when I was in college, and this is not a shot at my friends, I would have been crawled up in a corner somewhere, because they would have been making fun of me, throwing things at me, whatever else they did when you told them you were sick. And, and they wouldn't believe it. They would have just called you all the names that young men call each other. So I couldn't imagine that happening, being away from my parents. So that's really what made me think that we need to spend a lot more time on this. But mainly the coaches and the teachers need to, because they're the ones at time who will tell the student, let's say you can't show up for a test. Sorry, you can't show up for a test. You don't have anxiety, stop. But if your stomach hurts, okay, you don't have to show up for the test. Same thing if you're a basketball player or a baseball player. If you break your wrist, you don't have to show up for the game. But if you say, I'm dizzy because I have anxiety, you're considered weak. Now we've come so far with this, but I think it really hit me recently when I talked to a young man at Providence, and his roommates treated him poorly with this. And the problem is most young kids are not educated, even though the adults are getting there and the teachers are getting there and the coaches are getting there. The young kids and your friends in high school and in college don't accept it still. And it's the parents and the teachers who need to teach these kids that if someone looks and says they had a panic attack or are anxious or are depressed, that it needs to be treated like a real disease. So that's the long story to why I wanted to start the program, and hopefully we can continue this, because I know it's done well, and I'm excited about really building it and hopefully becoming a model of how other institutions do it.
Yeah, appreciate that. Was there any particular reason you focused on the teachers with the program, that particular angle?
Just because that's really starts with, I always thought in my mind, coaches and teachers, because it starts with them who normally, and this isn't, once again, it's like I said, my dad, I mean, the older you are, the less you understand this. I say older, anyone above, 35 probably, or whenever this, I think it's funny, but I really think this started around I feel like I can put a date on it. Now, funny thing, there's been years of people struggling before, but they wouldn't even say it. They wouldn't tell anyone. I remember when it happened to me, I lied to my boss and told him I had an inner ear infection. I couldn't tell him that I was dizzy, having a panic. I mean, I didn't know anyone else who had a problem yet. Now I learn that there's another 100 friends of mine or whatever who had their own problems, but didn't say anything either. So you really need the leaders and the teachers to accept it and talk about it. And I know you guys are doing an amazing job up there explaining this, and that it's going to happen. You're going to have friends who suffer this. It's understandable. It's a sickness. There's no difference. It's the same thing as a headache or flu or whatever it may be.
Thanks for sharing your experience and insights, Chris. As you know, last year I was fortunate to be selected as one of the first group of professors to receive the Academic Resilience Mini Grant Fellowship. It was great being part of a supportive community of like-minded people like Dr. Alonso Garcia, who you'll hear from in a second, that understand, care about the students' well-being, and also understand the importance of students' well-being to their learning, development, and the realization of their human potential. Interestingly for me, over the years, I've been teaching this self-leadership course, and at the undergraduate and graduate levels, as well as in the school continue ed. And I've incorporated more and more of what can be considered well-being practices into that, whether it's meditations, helping people become present, gratitude, deep listening, self-reflexivity, self-compassion, challenging your thoughts, identifying, pursuing your purpose, and working to improve relationships. And during this time, it was interesting, you talked about anxiety. What started happening is more and more students at the end of the course were telling me that their relationship with their anxiety was better. They were able to deal with it better than they had when they were seeing therapists and or taking medication. So based on this, a couple of years ago, I did an independent study with a group of students on anxiety. And what I realized is that my class had a lot of components of what they call this acceptance commitment therapy. But it also had the benefit of them being with their peers and sharing their experiences with one another, things about anxiety and things, which I think is pretty powerful. And then interestingly, from this thing, I developed this training called Changing Your Relationship with Anxiety that I've been using in class, and that's how I entered the fellows program. And I actually have done it for corporations, teams and corporations, and actually with that, as you were saying, interestingly enough, the head and assistant coaches at Providence College last year, I did some training with them. And then interestingly enough, finally, trying to bring this, as you're saying, it's so important to a larger audience. I stuck my foot in the water like you to be an entrepreneur and just started a business called Your Story that's going to help people with well-being and purpose and anxiety and all these things, which is exciting. So I appreciate your insights about being an entrepreneur as I dip my feet in these waters also. So next, I'd like to introduce two people into our discussion this time. And that's Dr. Nuria Alonso Garcia, who was a fellow with me last year, and a student that was in her class who recently graduated, Jennifer Gomez, class of 2020. Welcome, Dr. Garcia. Can you tell us about your experience with the Academic Resiliency Program and how you incorporated this into your classroom?
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Chris, for sharing your stories, your practices, and also for your generosity. I think that these faculty fellowship is allowing us to cultivate community and to nurture a sense of strength and reflection that is so important, particularly when we are often so involved in responsibilities, professional responsibilities, and don't find the space to pause and dialogue and sharing stories. I would like to thank also our colleagues, Mary O'Keefe, Cheryl Grenay, and James Campbell, who are the leaders and facilitators of these conversations that faculty under the auspices of the Riccobono Fellowship are having. And I think that coming together with the first cohort of faculty was particularly powerful last year because it was one of the most challenging semesters for all of us. And the work that I've done around resilience has to do is connected with storytelling and civic engagement. So I've been a member of the Providence College faculty community since 2000. So 20 years of work and foreign language studies, global studies, and also teacher preparation programs at the graduate level. So I do agree that cultivating resilience across disciplines is essential for our well-being and the well-being of our communities. So, so sharing stories is an integral part of our human experience, and really invites us to reflect on our personal trajectories, on our cultural legacies, and develop an awareness of the multiple voices involving in those authentic narratives. So the work that I've done on resilience, a project called Landscapes of Resilience, builds upon cultural narrative projects that I led with at-risk youth and senior populations in Latin America, Russia, and the US. And all these civic engagement initiatives are course embedded. So I've co-facilitated these projects. And as I mentioned, Latin America, Nicaragua, Ecuador, South America, Argentina, in collaboration with the students and nonprofit organizations and schools. And the idea around these projects is to really deepen individuals, students, and youth or seniors involved, their appreciation for how communities nurture culture and cultivate resilience differently. And we do so by sharing personal narratives. We depart by the story of self as a way to convey their identity, recount these choice points in their lives, instances when they face and responded to a challenge and experience a particular outcome and gain a new perspective. And that connects with the story that Chris shared of those critical moments and how out of those critical moments, you build that sense of resilience. So we've done these projects bilingually. So students, Providence College students have developed workshops, as I say, for youth and seniors, both internationally and locally in collaboration with the South Providence Community Library. And the purpose is to really just share what have they, been living through their lives, their aspirations, their future dreams, reflection, and continue to cultivate that idea of critical hope. The cultural narrative framework that we embrace rests on the values of cultural humility, eloquent listening and language participation. And that's what we deem very important, to engage with the communities in their native language. So Providence College students, through this work, these practices, recognize those challenges that they and the communities with whom they work are enduring, and learned reciprocal from each other, while at the same time continue to cultivate that intercultural understanding and enriching their views of the world.
Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate the power of storytelling. I think we've talked about this. Do the same thing with leaders to look at their stories in the past and tell stories of resilience. I think this is one method to improve your one's resilience, right? Is to be able to re-mean past experiences that might have been traumatic, that allow you kind of to move forward in some way. So appreciate the work you've done there for the benefit of your students and also other communities throughout the world. So we have Jennifer, one of the students who participated in the course. Unfortunately, her camera is not working today, but she's here with us today. Jennifer, can you tell us about the impact this class had on you as a student who graduated during a time of uncertainty in the spring semester, the semester when we just started dealing with the pandemic?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I feel like before I talk about this class, I want to discuss my experience in college, starting with Dr. Alonso Garcia in Nicaragua. So I came in wanting to step out of my comfort zone, and she helped me to do exactly that. So I started in Nicaragua with her and other students, working with Nicaraguan scholars on topics surrounding community building, leadership, and using our voices to fight any injustices. So I worked there for 2 weeks, and this is where I think it all began for me and has completely led me to become a teacher today. So I made so many bonds there with my peers, with the students in Nicaragua, and we ended up creating podcasts about issues and topics they wanted to talk about in their community. And so my partner, which was a Nicaraguan scholar, focused on getting clean water in the community and her thoughts on the topic. And all of the students were able to do this, and we were able to share it online for everyone to hear their voices. So then afterwards, I ended up working at the South Providence Community Library, as Dr. Alonso Garcia had stated. And I worked with her there for about 2 years. So I worked with middle school students in the area on topics surrounding exploring strengths, community strengths, resiliency. And then I worked on creating material for senior citizens in the community while Nuria had facilitated it. And those topics, again, they surrounded growth and resiliency. And now this leads up to the class that I was in to Ecuador, which we were not able to go on due to the pandemic. And I was a student leader for this trip. And my group and I, we had created material surrounding mental health, growth, and we worked very hard and tirelessly, almost every day, working to make this possible for the students. But then when we heard of the news, like a week right before it was just canceled, we knew that we had to make changes quickly, because our main priority was to sustain those relationships, sustain those bonds with ourselves, with the students that we were not able to meet. And so we worked to do just that. And it was tough to end off my senior year this way, but it taught me so much about the importance of adapting and remaining positive. So with everything happening so quickly, I feel like I've grown so much. So this class has definitely been something that has impacted me and has really taught me to be the teacher that I am today as well.
Thanks, Jennifer. I appreciate that. So Noria, overall, we have one student here, but how do you see this program impacting students' experience at Providence College?
Well, I think that, reflection and the importance, elevating the importance of the personal trajectory, growth, and how to move forward in times of trauma or in times of adversity. It is something that is not often taught. When you look at a syllabus, at any course, that is not a topic that you might find. Our dear colleague Mary O'Keefe has done it for years, and that's why she continues to inspire work. But I think that being more intentional about how we can cultivate the well-being of the students within our classes, within the content that we are discussing, how to nurture a sense of community and creating that space where everybody feels that they are part, that they can find a support system, that while they're learning material and academic skills important and relevant to their major, their field of studies, they're also developing life skills. They're also understanding that resilience is also a multifaceted notion, concept, practice, and people in communities cultivate it differently. And I think that those conversations are as important as conversation related to content in the specific area. My experience, Chris was talking about educators like teachers. My experience working with teachers in the urban education and global education and TESOL programs has also been informed by the work that we've done in our fellowship around resilience and mental health and social emotional learning are some of their priorities. And I've been able also to work and discuss avenues to for younger students to recognize that being resilient is not a given, and that is also very welcome to be vulnerable, and that vulnerability can create strong bonds. And now, particularly, we are enduring this new reality that is leading us to rethink the ways we connect with each other, cope with the stress and loss. And then responses need to be framed upon a core value that I think is at the heart of resilience, the fact that we are all interconnected. And more than ever, relationships, dialogue, and community can support our sense of resilience, and empathy can tend to our collective well-being. And that's something that I'm committed to practice in my classes, in my seminars, in the work I do with the community.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think along with you and Chris, I think the classroom is a special place on campus just because of the amount of times we spend with students, the trust and the relationships they build among each other allows some things to happen that don't happen in different spaces. And as you said, they're primarily for learning, but we realize students are in their bodies, in relationships with others, built to survive, suffering challenges, having anxiety, as Chris has mentioned a lot of times, right? And there are all these challenges that inhibit them maybe from thriving, from learning and developing. And they don't have to do with the content, but they're important for us to pay attention to as instructors and coaches, whoever, to help them develop. So I think this program is of great value. I'm very appreciative of Chris for starting it. So I just want to mention to anybody in the audience, you can type in questions to the Q&A function for Chris that he can ask or any of us, but definitely type them in there if you have any questions at this time. So I appreciate Dr. Garcia and Jennifer for sharing your experiences. So Chris, today is Giving Tuesday, and the theme is about PC being unstoppable along with its resilience theme. What does it mean for you as an alumni of the college, and how does it inspire you to give back? Chris, you're on mute. I know this is I don't know. I don't think I put you on mute, but you're on there. This is
All right, can you hear me?
yeah, absolutely.
No, I was just going to say, I wanted to first thank Matthew and Nuria. You guys are just doing an amazing job up there. It's very exciting for the future of this program. Thanks everyone for joining. You know, in this unprecedented time of need and uncertainty, we know there are many good causes, but we hope you'll consider a gift to PC for this Giving Tuesday. You know, I think we all know this is a very difficult time to ask for money, as everyone in the world is trying to either raise money as a business or get money to keep your restaurant open or whatever it may be. So we realize it's tough. If you've already made a contribution, though, thank you. If you've not, there's still time. And I'd encourage you to do so by visiting give2pc.org. That's give2pc.org to honor the resilient spirit of the Fryer family. Also, I'd like to give you a special shout out to my classmates who might be watching this evening to consider a gift in honor of our 20th anniversary for PC that's coming up. Thank you guys for having me again.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Chris. So I want to thank you, Chris, for your time, your generosity, and especially for starting that program that's benefited professors and students so much. And to Nuria and Jennifer for sharing your stories. Maybe we'll take a few seconds to see if we get any questions from the audience. So I assume this, I don't know if there's a question for Sarah or Jennifer. How do you balance stress with grades? I mean, I guess we could address that too.
Yes, absolutely. So I graduated this past May, but I'm still in school, and with the stress of what's going on with the pandemic and working as a full-time teacher, it's tough. But the main thing that I always remind myself is that I have to remain organized. I have to adapt. And it's just something I've been slowly but surely working on. And nonetheless, it's been working. I mean, I'm still at school, I'm still teaching, and it's just something that I work on with myself. And I have an amazing support system at home. My friends, they're always there for me. So
Yeah, thanks.
thank you.
You know, I don't know, I'm not a student anymore. Well, I am a student, I think, but I don't receive grades. But the way I always think about that for students to talk about, you can only have your attention in one place, right? So if you see it wandering off to worrying about grades, can you put it somewhere else? And to me, where you want to put your attention is on process, whether you're working out, playing an instrument or something like that, is try to focus on what will let you achieve a grade rather than, you know, worrying about the grade. Is trying to shift when you realize your attention's there, caught up in stress and anxious thought, is to try to move it. So Chris, we have a question here asking, you talked a little bit about the story about UNTUCKit. I guess people, somebody's curious as to what's the current status of UNTUCKit right now.
Well, we're still battling just because it won't end, and we're battling with the landlords because no one's really going into stores still. I mean, some people are in certain regions. We had a really good Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but of course, down from last year. But we're just waiting to get through this. It's now kind of a waiting game. We luckily worked out some things with our banks, and now it's just wait, because we cut our marketing way back because the marketing doesn't resonate nearly as much. And our other products really helped us survive. We have great, tees and Henleys and polos. Like polos went from 6% of the business to 18%, just because people want casual stuff. I came out with a casual line. So we kind of just adapted. And in the meantime, we made the business much, much more efficient. We bid out our production for shirts and saving $3 or $2.50 to $3 a shirt. So I think it allowed every business to get more efficient because we were growing so fast. We never had a chance to slow down and to say, let's fix these things. And some things really did get away from us from an expense perspective. So I'm much more excited about 2021. If we were the same business in 2019 as we will be in 2021, from an operational standpoint, we'll be a much stronger business. So.
Okay, appreciate that. So Chris, someone's asking, how did PC prepare you for the real world in your business?
It's a good question. It's tough to fully tell how you learn certain things. I mean, I definitely attribute some of it to or a lot of it to PC because it developed who I was as a person. I played tennis there, which definitely helped me. Carla Branch was my coach. He's a tough guy. He's, we had to be resilient on the court. So I know I learned a lot from athletics. But it's tough to pinpoint how, I get asked this question, obviously, whenever I'm at Providence, how Providence actually helped me, because I can't speak to a certain moment. But it obviously in my most important, many people's most important years from developing is at college. And it definitely developed my work ethic. And I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of it is work ethic, because if you're willing to put in those 20-hour days, then you have a chance to succeed. So I think I had to have learned, a lot of these skills at Providence.
Appreciate that. So there's another question here, I guess, for anyone. It's what other things are at PC that you think helps students be resilient? I don't know, Dr. Garcia, if you have anything.
I think the peer to peer support is also very powerful among Providence College students. I think that the mentorship that within particular major, I'm speaking about global studies in this case, but the peer mentorship that older students are able to offer to younger ones, same with our community partners who also come and co-facilitate courses with us and offer students a different perspective and sense of larger belonging beyond Providence College. So I think that there are a lot of support that comes from student peers, from community partners, also the student development office as many programs and strategies and workshops that help students also cultivate their sense of resilience. And same with celebrations, like the celebration of student scholarship and creativity, because it's not only through challenges that one cultivates resilience. In my opinion, it's also through the celebration of successes and reflecting back and how one has arrived to that culmination, right? Jennifer was talking before about graduating this year in such challenging time or in such kind of uncertain climate, as really help a lot of students shine in different ways and be reimagining what it is to be a college graduate in 2020. Maybe she can speak a little more about her experience now with Teach for America and how it's also seeing, Providence College resources, how they support her and in her path. So Jen, I don't know if you want to add something from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm part of Teach for America. That's how I was able to teach so soon. They've been very, very helpful. They've been There with all the core members, pushing us through what needs to be done, deadlines, and they're there for us. They're always checking in on us. Everyone knows that this is a very difficult time for everyone. So they always want to make sure that our mental health is a priority, because without that, you know, it's going to be very, very difficult to be there for others if you're not 100% yourself. And definitely Teach for America has been so supportive of me. Definitely, I'm very, very grateful to be a part of that organization.
So Chris, this is probably a good question for you since you're helping us out. Somebody's asking, Chris, how can the PC community help promote your business?
I guess just tell your friends and family about it. We actually now have a PC shirt. It's only college shirt we've made so far, and it's got kind of the logo going down the shirt and then a triangle. It's pretty cool. It comes in black and white. But yeah, I mean, give gifts and tell people about the idea. Any way we can sell a shirt these days.
And then a question about how do you keep your employees motivated during these difficult times?
That's a great question, because I wouldn't have imagined it's probably the hardest thing we have to do. We have an amazing team and we had an amazing culture. We were close. We worked late. Everyone felt like they kind of owned the company because they were there. Most people have been there in this crazy ride of growth. And even people I never would have thought I had to get into these conversations with I think it's the morale is low. The morale's low in the world right now. There's few people super excited. Now, some people's businesses excelled during this time, but most on the whole didn't. And you can't do it in person, so you do it on Zoom. It's very hard to really connect on Zoom with people. So we try to have a town hall once a week. As busy as I am, it's something I kept pushing and I realized I just have to do. Try to have occasionally one where we have a glass of wine and talk, but it's still very, very hard, because the bottom line is it's not very exciting right now to work in retail specifically, but there's many jobs. It's all about surviving and getting past this, and you have your problems at home. And I have 3 kids under 3 years old, which I've been locked in my house. I live in New Jersey for 7 months. So it's, everyone has these challenges, and it's tough to kind of get excited when you're dealing with your employees, when in the old days it was going to our office was the best thing in the world. So it's hard, but you just got to keep saying positive, say we're going to get through it, and look forward to when we emerge. And that's kind of the message.
And then one specific about your philanthropy. What drove you to invest in PC? What drives your philanthropy and involvement in Providence College?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always wanted to invest. Some people like investing in athletic programs, and some people like investing in buildings. For me, I just knew all the time I wanted to invest in things that impact people. So I donate. So 2 things I do is my hospital with cancer children, and then Providence. And I always worried, how was I going to do it at Providence? Because how are you actually impacting a person? In my mind, this is what I said. Then when I had some conversations, I found out you can help students who can't afford to go to school, or get them to go. And somehow I think this came up, like I said, about mental health, and I didn't even have to think about it. I really want to, if I can help people, I want to actually help the individual. That's just my thought. That's just the way I want to donate money.
Okay. Well, Chris, once again, thank you for your time tonight, for your donation, for your generosity, for the program. I appreciate the impact it's had on the school and on students. Thanks, Dr. Garcia, for showing up and sharing your experience with the program, and Jennifer also. It's greatly appreciated. So I think we're gonna end it there with the last question on philanthropy on this Giving Tuesday. We appreciate people showing up in the audience today for this event today. So thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
Go Friars.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Stay well, stay strong.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.